Now what happened was that I had a stuntman, and this stuntman was one of the toughest men I've ever met. He was a black belt judo, right, and he was very, very tough. And his name is Alan Chance. He was Jewish and unbelievably tough. And he was playing one of the Germans, same thing in the Inferno. And you remember when a fellow jumps out in front of me in Bessie and says, stop. And you remember, and I nearly hit him, and he flies out of the way. So that was Alan Chance. And Alan Chance said, now Ron, Guff, now don't worry a thing. He said, don't you worry about anything, Guff. Put your foot on the throttle, keep it going, barreling down, whatever speed you like, what do you want to make it? So I said, what do you like? He said, 50? I said, right. Keep it at 50, Guff. He said, don't go above 50, don't go less than 50. So I said, right. And he said, I'll get out the line. I said, you're sure, Chancey? He said, don't worry about me, Guff. I know what I'm doing. You keep it at 50 and I can judge it. And he didn't. And I hit him with Bessie up with the front bumper, and I hit him right on the front of the boot at 50 miles an hour. He jumped, but it hit him. Now, he threw him in the gut, and if you get something that you're really fond of and you hit him with a car, you can imagine how I felt. I felt dreadful. And I rushed to get a hold of him and to do the side, pull the car up, stop. And Terry Wall came over and said, get away. And took me away, wouldn't let me anywhere near him. They took his boot off, or they cut his boot off, they took him to the hospital, and he had 18 stitches in his leg, from his knee to his ankle. Straight off, no anaesthetic, just 18 straight stitches straight down his leg. And the impact of just hitting on the boot, it just opened it up like paper. Now, when his mates came to see him at lunchtime, you know what he said? He said, don't tell John, for God's sake. He said, don't tell the guy. He said, he'll get upset. Can you imagine, 18 stitches in the leg? All he's concerned of was that I'd get upset. So they said, okay, no, we won't tell him. So he got a big boot, and by God, he was back on the set after lunch. And he said to the director, he said, right, I'm all right. And they said, Chancey, what are you doing? And he said, no, I'm all right. He wanted to prove to me that he was going to be all right, that I hadn't hurt him. Well, of course, he lasted about 3 minutes, and he suddenly went, oh, there. When he was being taken home, we came to in the car, one of his great mates called Billy, and he said to Billy Horrigan, and he said, Billy, oh, Christ, he said, for Christ's sake, don't tell the wife. He said, she'll murder me. And he was really terrified of his wife. He said, she's always going to be get out this silly caper. He said, I should never have done it. She'll murder me, don't tell the wife. And he actually got away with it. I don't know how, but he kept it from his wife very easy. Yeah.
Well.
Yes, sir.
When did you work with Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett?
When did I work with Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett? I did a show in Coventry, and I wanted a feed for doing sketches, and as I'm 6'2.5", I wanted a small feed, somebody little, so we got Ronnie Corbett. And this was one of the first stage shows Ronnie Corbett had ever done, and he went on to be never heard of again. And he and I worked together for the whole season with great joy. We shared a caravan together, which is what you call a trailer, and we had enormous fun together. Later, when I started the Navy Lark, my radio series, which ran for 20 years, nearly 20 years, I got a young character actor in as a voice man, which is the sort of thing that I've been doing at other people's radio shows. And he was also, you've never heard of him, his name was Ronnie Barker. And Ronnie Barker got so big during the run of the Navy Lark that he actually left. He couldn't do all the work that he had to do, so he was the only one who ever left the company in nearly 20 years. But he went on to become probably our greatest character star, comedy star. Dick Emery was my feed on radio for 3 years. And Dave Allen, I gave him his first job ever. It was a red coat at Batman's holiday camp, which is a holiday camp is, and Dave was there. He'd never been in show business, and he went and he was on as a red coat. He used to do amateur shows, and my agent had heard him and said, I think he's awfully good, and he called me to the office once before I went to do a summer season at a seaside resort, and he said, I'd like you to hear this young man, and he brought Dave into the office and said, "Brother Dave, do your act." Like, can you imagine anything crueler than saying to a comedian, do your act in front of one person and sit there going, and after 2 minutes I said, stop, that's enough. And Dave joined my company. So I'm very honoured that people that worked with me and for me in my shows became very much bigger than I was and will ever be, and I'm delighted not that that should have happened. Because it's, you know, I started with other people, you all start somewhere, and they were great people to have working with me.
We just have time for one more question.
The lady here.
Thank you. In the 5 Doctors, which I finally got to see today twice.
You saw it today twice?
Yes, I was. The second time was dead.
Yeah.
I finally got to see it. I read the book about 6 times before that, so I knew it was coming up. So
Get on with the question.
And how did they do the filming for the Black Obelisk when it comes and picks up the people? And how did you know how to go into it? And
I'm sorry, what is that?
the Black Obelisk.
Well, how did I
When you're in the car and you're rushing and Black Obelisk comes out of the sky and picks you up.
Oh, you mean the effect of the black?
Yeah, the black thing.
Oh, the scoop, it's electronics. It's done purely electronically. There's a whole department at the BBC which handle all that sort of thing. Nothing to do with it at all. I just get on with the acting and they do the effects. Yes, do you want me to?
I had another one.
We have a couple more questions then.
I had another one.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you, sir.
Okay. Alright. The thing we noticed, well, the thing that a bunch of friends of mine and I noticed is that's distinctive about your doctor is you play it with a lot more, I don't know, flair or gallantry. And yesterday we were kind of thinking about people like Errol Flynn almost and things like that. Did you get any of the qualities of your doctor from people like that in the older movies?
Not Errol Flynn. He was a lovely reprobate. I was in a rep with him. He was a marvelous man. No, I don't think anybody does, really. I think you learn from great actors like watching people like Gilbert and Olivier and Ralph Richardson and people you can learn. But I mean, how could you ever copy or learn anything from Ralph Richardson? He was unique. Most of these people are unique. You can't copy them. And if you do, because if you're just trying to be another Ralph Richardson. No, I think things brush off on you when you work with people. I've had the honour of working with many eminent actors, and I think things have brushed off, and I've watched them, seen sort of just, how they do it, how it works it out. But the other is purely a lucky situation. I mean, either you're lucky enough if you have any charm for it to happen and come over. There are people which are brilliant actors which are not lucky enough to have charm. That sounds terribly pompous, but to try to answer your question, I think it's luck. Just like equally, I mean, you know, with the ladies will say this way, you know, what makes sex appeal? You can't put your finger on it. Well, you'll pardon me. You know, I mean, everybody doesn't see beauty in others. I mean, you might see a girl who says, "My God, would you look at that beautiful woman?" And I'll look and say, "Where?" And like a girl will say, "Well, I think that fellow's the most attractive man I've ever met in my life." And you say, "You must be out of your head." Thank God, we all think like that. Otherwise, we'd all be after the same fellow and the same girl. So, pure luck. Pure luck. Yes, ma'am.
You did the record, Who is the Doctor? Did you write
Who is the doctor? No, I didn't have anything to do with it at all. I wasn't mad about it. I didn't like really the way it was done. But it sold quite well. Not brilliant. It sold better now than it did then. As a sort of collector's item. But it was produced by the man who owned Deep Purple, you know, the group Deep Purple.
Yeah.
Well, it was made by him. He's a friend of mine. He said, "Hey, come on, why don't we make a record?" I said, "We have written the record. Let's make a record." And so we got through the times to do it. But if you really want my honest opinion, I prefer the flip side. No. You've got a rip-off record, I'm afraid. Yeah, and that record has no right to be out. There's been a terrible hoo-ha about it. It's the real record that was made on a purple label. I don't know if anybody's got it. And on the other side, there is a number I do called Pure Mystery. Has anybody ever heard that? No? Well, try to get over a copy of that record if you can. That's the one to get a hold of. That's the collector's piece. Pure mystery.
Last question?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Boy in front?
Yes, sir. Young boy there.
Well, in some of your stories, you use this, like in Pearl and Another Kid, where you use these funny looking things that are really skinny to one of like, is it just a full color and supply those, or you want it to look weird?
Would you translate?
Oh, in various episodes, there's a very modern looking phone, very slim receiver, and I think you're asking, were they props or are they supplied by the phone company?
Oh, you mean a telephone
Especially.
with a thing where you pick up the piece and do that? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's really skinny ones.
You mean old-fashioned ones? No?
Oh, no, the modern, the modern, ultra-modern. The modern.
Oh, no, they'll be purely props. They wouldn't work at all. They'd just be props made to look good for whatever the situation was. Yeah. Are we up? Time?
Yes, I think.
All right, well now, well.
Okay, afraid that we're running a little bit over time, but question and answer session is now afraid at an end. So if all of you would just please remain seated until the word is go. Mr. Pertwee and the dealers will be going to dealer's room so that they can set up for the autograph session.
Yeah, now let me interrupt you there. And I've got, what I do first of all is that I sign photographs for anybody who wants photographs, because they don't understand that they came too long. I managed to find a few more of those 10 by 8, but people asked me for them yesterday. I've got still a few of the pictures from the House of Blood, which is quite Doctor Who-ish. I've got some others, little snaps, which are comedy snaps taken from, because I sold all the postcards that I had. But I'll put a box there, and if anybody, the others we sell, because I give the money to charity. And as you know, so these little snaps, I'll put a box down there, just give contributions, and you can have what I've got of those.
Actually, I have one last question. We have no time. No, just one. Now you've been in Canada for a few days, I'd like to just ask, what do you find most striking about Canada in Labour? That's
going to take a minute to answer, really. I've been struck enormously because it is such a cultural shock to come from the United States for 6 weeks and then come to Canada, because you are utterly different. I mean, everything is completely and utterly different. The only thing I have to say about your cars. But apart from that, thank God I haven't seen a lot of hamburger. I can truthfully tell you that my hosts have been the most marvellous and generous hosts I've ever had. Kevin and Christine and all her gang have treated Ingeborg and I royally. The food we've had has been marvellous. Christine took us out to dinner the other day with her father, who wrote up the menu in Chinese, what we used to have, and we had a Chinese meal, one of the best I've ever had in the world, and I know China well, and I've travelled extensively through China. I don't ever remember eating better Sichuan food than that. So thank you to Kevin and Christine. I'd like to say that in public, and all the rest of your committee who does a wonderful job of looking after it, and I mean, we really do appreciate it. All things are possible if you work at it. Christine and Kevin worked at it, and they found a way round how to get me here. This was because it was, I have to be honest with you, it was because I was already over here working for other people, so this makes the thing naturally simpler and easier. Under normal circumstances, of course, naturally, for a club of limited numbers, it makes it financially impossible to drag a couple of people up across the world. It makes it very difficult. Your question was what? Have I answered it?
the food.
That was what it is. I love the food. I love your open air markets that I went to. They're not unusual, but I had a very interesting experience. Yesterday I went with Laura and Norman Sochel, who runs this beautiful gallery. If you don't know it, I beg of you go to it and see this wonderful gallery. Do you know Laura's gallery with all the Eskimo art? Have you seen it in the Red Indian art? Well, go and see it if you haven't. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm going home laden with an enormous piece of sculpture that I can hardly get off the ground. They say much. But they were wonderfully good to us, and I've forgotten what I was thinking. But
I think, John, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm not going. I can see you again later. But I'll be in there now, so if anybody that wants photographs signed, I shall be in there signing photographs, and then after that, when we finish with all that, then I'll sign any books or anything else that you might want. Okay?